Test, 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 test.
Nope. Give me a sec.
Because I can't hear your mic over there.
You can't.
I
try
can't.
open it up 4 instead of 3. I wonder if I swapped it. Or 2, maybe.
Try. Not a thing.
Not from any of it?
Nope. I hear me.
What the hell? That. This is open Clint's. Try, open up 1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, 3, and 4 are open.
Oh, wait. Please have this switch.
Okay, that's it.
Yep.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Got it?
Nope, but I know what it is. Just started. We'll be good. It's gonna be that fucker right there.
Unknown submarine contact in the vital area. Away the Nixie team away. Away the Nixie team away. Set general quarters. Set general quarters.
General quarters, on hands, main battle station. General quarters, on hands, main battle station.
That's it. That's all there is to it. That's us. Hey, guess who's on here? Let's turn this over here.
What up?
Hey.
Hi.
Look, it's...
How are you?
It's Sackhead Sean and Sackhead's BZ.
And for the record, this is not booze.
Okay.
Just so everyone knows.
I am incredibly glad that you pointed the obvious out. That that's not booze, and nor should any of us think that that's booze in any way, shape, or fashion. You know, Okay, behind Inside Baseball.
Yes.
We were scrambling there just for a moment.
It's good to be back.
And so what everybody didn't see was the scrambling that was occurring because, of course, BZ's in charge of the TV and the sound and stuff right now. So no scrambling occurred. Don't even think that
You see that I'm sweating?
happened.
Does anyone see I'm sweating?
Already, we got 3 people in here. We got Whiskey Dale. We
Hey,
got
Whiskey
Mike
D.
in here. We got Mayhem, and we got 2 viewers.
Mayhem.
Mayhem.
Outstanding. I love it.
I mean,
love a little mayhem.
Listen, if you can't go with Mayhem, who the hell can you go with? And I didn't even get to go with the standard intro. And tonight it's going to be like this: Sean.
Hey.
And BZ tear
Yes.
through the gristle of today's screaming headlines and rip out the sinewy tendons of truth ensconced within, all from the hoary streets of Sacramento Fornicalia, exposing the trembling toadies, the sniveling jackanapes, and the fripperous fopdoodles infesting leftist and progressive ant farms nationally.
I take a picture of the camera.
Yeah.
Taking a picture of me.
Okay, hang on. Let's give you that. There you go. There's the camera. There's Sackhead Sean.
Perfect.
So welcome to Sackhead Sean.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to, of course, be back.
Good to see you here, and welcome. You know, we like chaos because pretty much this show and anything revolving around SHR at any given time of day really happens to revolve around chaos.
Yes.
And so, being a show of chaos, we welcome Mayhem to chat.
you're
It's
gonna
so
know-
good to see Mayhem here. You know, did you notice that Mayhem was gone for a while?
Yes.
Mayhem was purposely gone.
Yes.
I don't know necessarily why that was.
I do.
But somebody made a decision not to allow Mayhem to. Let's see, is Mayhem Progressive or is Mayhem Geico?
Mayhem's Geico.
Mayhem is Geico. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So you brought up the word chaos earlier, and I'm going to throw a little history at you.
Okay.
I know you were going to get this,
Okay.
but what show contained an evil organization that was named Chaos?
Wait, I know. Can I say? Can
Yes,
I say? Okay.
yes.
Get Smart.
Yes.
Because there were
Adams.
2. That's right, and Barbara Feldon.
And Barbara Feldon, that's right.
And there were two forces at odds with each other all the time. One was
Yes.
chaos,
Yes.
and the other one was
Oh.
Control.
Control. That's right. Control.
and that was also Don Adams' smartphone,
Yes. The shoe phone.
the shoe phone, the original smartphone / shoe phone. and now there was a very important and special automobile that was in that series that a lot of people have forgotten about.
Oh.
And it was a little 2-door, but he had one of a limited production of that little 2-door. It was English,
Austin Healey.
except it was it had a very special difference in it from the United States. What was the car,
was
and
it the
what was
Austin
the
Healey?
difference?
Was it the Austin Healey?
It was a. There were 2. They manufactured 2 versions of this, and Whiskey Dale and Chad already got one.
Which one?
Now he got the they made the Sunbeam. Okay, it's a 2-door. They made the Sunbeam Alpine, and the one that he had was the Sunbeam Tiger.
Wow, look at you go.
And it was the Sunbeam Tiger because of what? It had something American in it.
Had to be transmission.
It had a 289 V8.
Oh, who made it?
Ford.
Was it a Ford?
Yep.
See,
A Ford V8 in a Sunbeam. Holy crap. Now, I don't know anything about the performance mechanics of the car, but I just remember that, hey, I've seen a Sunbeam Alpine before. They're kind of cool-looking cars, but I to this day,
haven't seen it.
I have never seen a Sunbeam Tiger.
That's amazing.
And I don't even know if you can get one. And if you could, I have no idea what you would be paying for it. Whether you'd be paying like Cobra money these days, actual original Cobra cash. Because Cobra's now
$700K.
Fuck me. Yeah, there are some of them that are going for like $1 million if they're really good, and they're original
Yes.
Cobras. You know, all the numbers have to match.
Yep.
they're going for an assload of cash.
No, they are. And it's funny. You ever follow the stories, BZ? Obviously, we do politics and news, but every once in a while, like I know in your show, you do the feel-good stories, right? I love when somebody buys a house or they go to a deceased relative's house. Not that I love the deceased part, but they go into the barn or the garage and they pull out something that's been there for 35 years and everybody forgot it existed. I know there was one of a 67 Stingray recently that was worth like $70K.
Yeah. I remember reading something about that. I don't remember exactly what it was,
Yep.
but it was like almost the prototypical crazy fucking barn find.
Yes, absolutely.
That you discover, you make this amazing discovery, and it's astounding.
And I thought it was a 67. I may have got the year wrong. But there was a Ferrari recently that somebody bought a house, and there was a barn that was in like the back 40 on the property. They never checked it when they bought the house because they were like, oh, we're just going to knock it down or whatever. And they finally went back there and started going through it, and it was like a Ferrari California original. But I'm just always amazed that for me, right, like, my truck's a decent truck. It's a nice looking truck.
You've got a hell of a truck.
And I enjoy it. I would never forget that I had that.
Wait a minute. Jesus.
And again,
wait a minute.
This
Where'd
is not
my
booze.
truck go? I can't remember.
Right? This is not booze.
Where did my truck go?
But I would never like park it somewhere and then forget over 15 years. Like,
yeah. Let's see.
Shit.
Did I put my truck in the parking lot or the barn?
Now, which one did I put in the barn? Was it the truck or the cow?
Right.
Oh, shit,
right.
it's the truck. Well, where the fuck is the cow?
Yeah. Something's going to be
Somebody's
missing.
driving the cow to work.
Something's going to be missing here pretty soon. I think enough time may have passed where I can tell people this story. And you're talking about barn finds. And nobody on my side of the family listens to the show anyway, so... So I can tell this now because speaking of barn finds, and it is kind of a cool story, I have to admit. And I've told people on a private one-to-one level before what has happened.
Right.
But this is actually a true story. And it's not quick, so it'll take about 3 minutes to tell. But at the end, I guarantee it'll be at least semi-interesting.
To make a short story long.
To make a short story long. Okay, see this right here? I don't know if anybody can see that.
Yes,
I'll let that.
It's a watch.
Yeah, that's a watch. Well, that's a Rolex Submariner.
Yes.
And I had this thing appraised.
Really?
Well, number one, if you have a Rolex Submariner.
Hey, based on some of our listeners, I don't know if you want to give that price out. They'll be lining up in the street to thump you.
When I got this watch.
And it's not like you don't stick out in the crowd, BZ. You're not gonna... I don't see you weaving in.
It's the circumstances under which I acquired this watch that are interesting. Now, once I made the acquisition, once I realized what it was, I had to take it just to a specialist. First, I took it to a jeweler.
Nope.
To tell me, okay, is this real? Because I know that there are knockoff Rolexes. And by the way, I fucking adore this watch. This thing is so beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous.
I have no doubt.
It's real gold, real silver. And it's the kind I discovered this blue is a color that you can't get anymore. So anyway, first I go to a jeweler, a really good jeweler in town that begins with a G, and they say, you know what, we can't do that. You're going to have to go to this individual guy because if you want to find out if this is true, if this is truly a Rolex, go to this guy. He's on this street, and he's the guy that we recommend to open up the back for you. And I just want to warn you.
Wait,
that when
is this the guy? Is he on Merchant Street in downtown?
No.
Okay.
No. He was over in the north area.
Okay.
And they said, by the way, just to let you know, when you walk in the door, bring cash because for him to open it up, it's going to be a couple of dollars. But he will be able to verify for you whether that's real or whether it's a knockoff.
Immediately upon opening, probably.
Yeah. So $250 later, just to open up the watch. He then confirmed that for me. And so then I went for an appraisal, and my last appraisal about 4 years ago was $15K because of the nature and the time that it came out and whatnot. Okay, so the story is, though, And this is why I'm saying now, and my family isn't listening because they don't listen to my show anyway.
Why would they?
So my father passed away in 2009. And some people were interested more than others in getting certain things, and there were certain items that I was not the executor.
Right.
The executor lives far away,
Of course.
down in San Diego,
Because that makes things so much easier
and that
in
was,
a time of
right. That was my older
emotion.
brother. So in these tumultuous times, I had the opportunity to go through and grow through everything. I mean, I found incredible things about my dad. I found things buried from World War II. I found his pilot's license. I found maps, California maps, that were marked classified from World War II. Wow. Because they didn't want to give them to they thought the Japanese were going to get in there. And possession of those maps was a felony at the time, by the way. I found a photograph of the Enola Gay taken by my father. And on the back, it's inscribed in his writing, "This is the Enola Gay, the plane that that flew from Tinian." It's something like the plane that flew from Tinian and dropped the atomic bomb in World War II.
That's crazy.
And he took that photo, and that's his handwriting on the rear. Well, I also found this watch. Buried in a whole bunch of places, I found a bunch of letters from he had two brothers. And I found some heart-wrenching letters between himself and his other two brothers. And this was a weird thing. Of all three brothers that went into World War II, all of Dad's brothers, all three of my grandma's sons went into World War II. My dad went into the Air Force. He flew B-17s for the 8th Air Force.
Right.
And then my brother Bill went into, let's see, where'd Uncle Bill go? Uncle Bill went into the Navy, and he went down on the Yorktown.
Wow.
And survived.
Wow.
And then brother Jim went into the U.S. Army. So all three agencies from three brothers in three separate areas, which I found kind of odd. But I'm rooting around this, and I see this beautiful kind of green. I don't know if anybody's ever seen a Rolex box. They're kind of impressive, but on the other hand, they're kind of not impressive.
They're impressively plain.
They're kind of plain. They have a little bit of shell scroll work on the top, and I thought it really wasn't marked. And I opened it up, and I'm thinking, because I knew that Dad used to go across to Hong Kong, and that he was stationed overseas, and he used to do a whole bunch of stuff. He got assigned to the Pentagon, all sorts of places. So I thought, okay, he probably went to Hong Kong, and probably this is a knockoff. And one appraisal later, I discovered that, no, this is not a knockoff, and no one was interested except for me in going through all of Dad's things, because I was told quite appropriately by certain other personnel, "Nah, we're not interested in that stuff."
Why?
And so, okay, they're not interested in that stuff, and I am.
So, and the story, so the watch alone is obviously impressive. I mean, it being what it is extremely impressive.
And the other thing is, I have no idea where he got this.
But
I don't know if he got it in the States. I don't know if he got it in Hong Kong
or overseas
or wherever he went. I knew he went to Germany,
right,
once or twice. I don't know. It's like
Maybe
so
it was
many
a
other
gift.
things about my dad, or a gift. I don't know.
Right.
There's just.
And so I think the amazing part of that, though, BZ, is when you have part of your family who is just like, it's only like rich in legacy, and it tells you so much about this man who's no longer able to tell you.
That's another story that I'm sure that, and I'd like to go there before the bottom of the hour.
And the history that this man went through, and you have to understand, like, World War II, so many people were immersed in it, and it was so violent and vicious and bloody, and
he never talked about it.
And a lot of people didn't. A lot of people. I remember my friend Paulie was saying that his grandfather was a Marine in World War II, Guadalcanal, and he.
Oh, that was the worst.
And he and a couple other guys in the neighborhood down in Fresno would sit in the front porch in the middle of summer when it's 105 degrees, drinking hot black coffee. And they wouldn't talk about it with anyone else, but between themselves, they'll talk about it.
Yeah.
And as soon as anybody else would walk up, they'd stop. And I can remember my grandfather, he was on a minesweeper in the Pacific in World War II.
Really? Was he? God bless him. That's fabulous.
My other grandfather, I think, drove landing crafts in the Atlantic in World War II. And neither one of them spoke about anything.
God,
ever.
guts.
Ever. Both Navy guys.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine in any situation where you're going to make landfall on hostile territory with troops? Can you imagine being one of those guys that had to? Number one, you've got to be out in the ocean, exposed. You've got to drive it. You've got to know how. And those things were as seaworthy as a tank.
Yeah. Really was.
They were not seaworthy. They leaked like crap.
Yep.
They had a blunt front, so they certainly weren't going to go fast at all, and it made them all sitting ducks.
And the North Atlantic was horrible for regular ships.
Oh.
Never mind a flat front that's just beating on those waves.
Yeah, never mind any kind of a craft like that really is a piece of crap.
Yep.
It's designed for one reason: go slow and hold a lot of troops.
Yep.
And then, as captain or of a boat like that, a landing craft
Driver.
then you've got to think somehow in your brain. If anybody in that, whatever happens to those people in there, you can't help but think, I took them there. I'm responsible for them, and I'm watching them. Number one, I'm covering my butt to make sure that I don't get killed, so that I can keep delivering on my part of this story.
And then that front goes down, and depending on where they're landing, the machine gun fire is coming in right away.
Yeah, and then to have to watch your men in front of you be mowed down, and at the end of it all, you live.
So. And for me, the minesweeper part of it was scary, and here's why: you don't know where they are. And I know, like for me, it's the unknown. I'm one of those people that if I know what's coming, no matter how horrible it might be, I can prepare myself. Right? I can deal with it. Right. There may be there are parts of anything that you can never deal with appropriately or whatever. PTSD. There's a whole bunch of things, but I think for me, if I know something's going to suck, I can wrap my brain around it a little bit. And even if it's extremely difficult, I know I can get through it or I'll find a way. The unknown, especially underwater, for whatever reason to me, that scares the shit out of me. Like, you're not just trying to avoid mines, you're sweeping them, you're dismantling them, you're destroying them, you're finding them and making sure other ships don't hit them. That to me is way more freaky for some reason.
You're the EOD tech of the water.
Yes.
And just a little tidbit, I don't know if people know it, but John Wayne owned an ex-minesweeper.
No kidding.
And it was called the something Goose, Gray Goose, something like that. Folks in chat can probably look that up on the internet.
Whiskey Dale will get it.
He probably will. And he owned a minesweeper. And then for quite some time, minesweepers were built of wood, of course.
Of course.
During World War II, which was the other weird thing. I was talking the other night about technology from World War II and the amazing technology that people didn't know about that came out of World War II. And yet, as technologically advanced as we became, and the Germans became, and the Japanese became, still, we were flying planes in World War II whose control surfaces were made of canvas.
Yes.
The U.S. or the Army, the U.S. Air Force. C-47, all its control surfaces were canvas.
Yep.
The British were still, they were flying the Hawker Hurricane.
Yep.
And the Mosquito was built of wood. The Japanese were flying wooden planes for a while.
Yeah, I was going to say.
For a while, we were even flying biplanes.
Yes, and you look at the landing gliders that they used, all wooden canvas.
All wooden and canvas for lightweight and essentially nothing more than death traps.
Well, and that's why when we would talk, Clint and I would joke on the show all the time about just bringing out the Constitution for one more
Wild Goose whiskey. God dang, Whiskey Dale!
I knew he was going to get it.
He said the Wild Goose is still plying the Pacific, a living reminder of the screen actor whose motion picture career began in 1926. Yep, bingo.
See, that's pretty amazing.
Thanks, WD. Man, I knew you would get that stuff.
But you think about what, and a lot of times too, the technology was available, but it wasn't as efficient, and it was just, it's what they knew, and what they knew was working better at the time. It was working, so they just went with what they knew was working, and then, it's like the bar. I always bring up the bar. Have you seen the new updated version of the bar?
No. Now, for those uninitiated, when you're saying bar, you're talking about, I'm assuming, the Browning automatic rifle.
Yes.
And so the BAR. Here's why. The other reason that I liked the BAR. This really dates me.
Infantry
This
killer.
really, really dates me. There was a TV series in black and white called Combat.
Combat.
With Rick Jason and
I watched Combat growing up with my dad.
oh God, not Kenneth Tobey, but another guy, and his name will come to me. But I loved Combat.
Yep.
And there was a guy whose job was to carry the BAR, and
Yep.
I thought, you know what? That's the guy I want to be in combat. I wanted to be the guy that carried the BAR.
Well, and a heavy son of a bitch to carry,
Oh yeah.
but a nasty son of a bitch to fire. It cleaned out some people. It was an infantry killer. And but there is a company, and I want to say they're out of Idaho, Iowa, somewhere in the
I
Midwest,
didn't know there was an update.
that has recreated it, cut it down, got rid of a lot of just the junk out of it they didn't need, and got it down to about 14 pounds.
Yeah, because they used to come with bipods.
Well, yeah, because it was so big. Got down to about 14 pounds, maybe even a little bit less now, and still full rock with it. And I was watching a thing on YouTube about it. Oh,
Vic
Beezy.
Morrow, God,
Vic
Whiskey
Morrow.
Whiskey Dale comes. God, dude, you are so incredible. He comes to the rescue once again.
Every
Vic
time.
Morrow, Rick Jason, Pierre Jalbert, Jack Hogan, Combat. Dude, you nailed it.
Great show.
Oh, thank you again.
But that's on my
Holy
list
moly.
of rifles I want before I die is the new updated bar and the M1A Scout.
I'd love to have an M1.
Yeah.
I would love to have just an open sight
M1.
M1, which is why, and we're going to take a break in about 2 minutes. And after the break, I want to continue this.
Yes.
Because I'd like to make a point, which I'm sure that and I really want your input on it as well. Because this speaks, what I'd like to talk about, it speaks to the two of us and our relationships with our fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many things that, in retrospect, I wish I'd either had the common sense or the bravery or the insight to ask my dad. Because when the final day came and the realization sunk in a week, 2 weeks later, whatever it was, and I finally realized there's so much about my dad
Yep.
that I don't know,
Yep.
that he never told me, and I was foolish enough not
Never
to
to
ask because I was so wrapped up in my life about what was going on and all of the things that I would want to know about him, that he knew about the family, his side of the family, and what he did, that just because of the nature of who he was and who that generation was, he never talked about and I never asked.
No, I think that's a great.
Shame on me.
I think that's a great conversation to have because I think too that this is something that we talk about progressing as mankind, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. I think one of the good things that has come out of it is they were of that generation that you just didn't talk about certain things.
Yeah.
And I think that's changing a lot where you do start talking about those certain things, and it may only be with certain people, but it not only it brings out that history, that legacy a little bit, and sometimes it may be a horrible and tragic thing that they have to talk about, or sometimes not. There's some great things that people have done that just fall by the wayside because it happened 25 years ago, and at the time it was really cool, but now I never thought to talk about it again. And you hear other people tell stories, and you're like, my God, that was my father, or that was my mother, or really that happened? And they're like, yeah, I never told you. I was like, no, so I like that idea.
There was a kid, before we go to the break, and during the break, maybe I can see if I can dredge this up. There's a young kid, I don't know, like 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, somewhere, and he's probably on YouTube. But what he did is he started a project where
World War
his
II.
job was to contact
Yep.
as many World War II veterans
I got to look this kid up because
as
I
he
watched all of them.
could, and then he went out and created videos about this. There's a story about it, and all of these men and a couple of women, they were loving to talk to him
And tell
about
their
their stories because they perceived his generation as not caring about any of them at all.
He's 20.
And it's an incredible story.
Yeah, I'm pulling his name up really quick. I watched the videos too, and they were amazing.
Oh my God, they're incredible.
His name is Rishi Sharma, and he was a junior in high school when he started it, and he wanted to interview every World War II combat veteran that he could, and he was ditching school to do it. He would ride bikes to the local senior home.
How cool is that?
Interview the guys. He's really an amazing guy, and he asked this kid. I'll tell you what, and you could tell if you just search Rishi Sharma, Rishi, last name's Sharma. Even if you look at the still photos, you can tell these folks are loving the fact that he's telling their story.
Yep.
And you could tell that
he's interested.
And you could tell that he loves them for it. If you watch the videos, they're amazing. I highly recommend it. And kudos to this young man for especially a generation that we're losing so much of as we speak.
Exactly.
To be able to make their story last for eternity. Kudos, because I was blown away and very touched by those videos.
They're incredible. Everybody needs to watch them. Folks, we're going to take a break and be right back.
Conservative media done
Someone
right.
told me I needed to shave.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard... at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capitol, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through shrmedia.com, highplanestalkradio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender ever,
because truth is not always pleasant.
Hey guys, it's Sackhead Clint. I'm excited to tell you about a brand new show here on the SHR Media Network. I'm teaming up with the one and only all-powerful, the bloviating Zeppelin, sitting here to my left, bringing to you a fresh new show here on the network. It's Against Tyranny. And we'll be picking up where the Sackheads left off. Excited to be with you, sir.
Sackheads Against Tyranny.
We're going to chat. We're going to chat Wednesday nights.
S-H-A-T.
Sackheads Against Tyranny.
Wednesday nights, 11 p.m. Oh, it's the same time, right? 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific.
Same SAC time, same SAC channel.
Yep. shrmedia.com.
See what I did there?
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics,
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
Hey, BZ. So the plan's working. You got rid of Sacco. Sean is now stepping away.
I never even saw him.
And I know, and insidious. Insidious. You know, we talked about this for, a good, for the last 3 years. And finally coming to fruition.
You know I'm still in the room, right?
It's almost like he's here still. Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's kind of.
It's amazing. It's kind of
at you.
It's kind of eerie.
Kind of a poltergeist.
Like a poltergeisty thing.
Yeah, sackheads against tyranny.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I love that.
It's a great.
It's a jaunty little tune.
It's a good bumper, man.
It is. It's great to come in on that stuff. And it's great to see you. It's too bad we can't have you back every Wednesday because we'd love to get the band back together. But hey, I'm thankful for little things. So just having you in the studio tonight,
no pressure,
is well. Come on, listen. Of all the people that don't respond to radio pressure, it's you, because there are some people, and you and I both know it, who can get down and sit in front of a microphone and just do it, and it just rolls out of them. And you're one of those people. And there are some people who you can put in front of a microphone, and they may be great extemporaneous speakers. Otherwise,
freeze up in front of the microphone
and put them in front of a microphone, and
it comes out of me like a refined belch.
We got a new guy in chat, Andy Wood.
Hey.
Great to see you in chat. Mayhem is here. We already welcomed Mayhem because
I'm glad
this show is all about chaos.
I'm glad Andy brought the wood.
Yeah, no kidding. Excellent. Great to see you here. We were talking about our dads. There's some things that I wish that I'd done and said about my dad.
Yes.
And my advice to everyone, if you're of a particular age where your dad or your mother, it doesn't make any difference, your parents, and someone is, that's a great T-shirt.
Thank you.
By the way,
Thank
tell
you.
people where you got that.
It's grunt style. I love grunt style.
It's good stuff.
Anyone who's seen my wardrobe at all in the last year knows that I love grunt
that's
style.
Right. It's, I can attest to that fact. It's about 90% grunt style. And they've got great designs.
God help me if they make underwear and socks.
By the way.
Because I'm in.
That's right. I'm all in on
I don't
that
know
one.
who the guy is, but I bought him a boat. I'm pretty sure at this point. He is somewhere.
And he's not even a sponsor in your.
I know.
But he makes.
It's one of those products that even though we are not sponsored by them, it is entirely worth it to me. They
make good stuff.
The quality's there. They're funny. The shirts are great. They have so many options now. They have sweatshirts, T-shirts, you name it. Women's wear, kids wear. We're not getting paid, and I'm still speaking like this about grunt style.
Well, that's
and you get awesome badass shirts like this, right? I mean, how can you go wrong with that?
The thing is, their graphics are they're just fabulous.
Yeah.
You know, there's some T-shirts that you see where you're thinking that's kind of an interesting concept.
Yep.
But they screwed the pooch on the execution.
I agree.
And they don't screw the pooch on the execution.
They have one. It looks like a Hawaiian sunset, almost a very Magnum PI looking cartoonish thing. But
Magnum PI is coming back. By the way,
we can talk about that later. But all it says underneath is Aloha Snack Bar. And that just makes me laugh every time I see the damn shirt, and I have to buy it. I haven't bought it yet. I laugh. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about that shirt, but I laugh my ass off.
I'm going to have to tell you that up until about 6 shows ago, for about 4 shows, one of my my sponsors generally are the Skunk Works, Lockheed Martin, the Boeing Company, Pratt & Whitney.
Yep.
And for a while...
Kettle One.
Well, that goes without saying. But the other one that was a sponsor of my show was the Oahu Snack Bar. And the Oahu Snack Bar, I said, there's just a little bit of Muhammad in every bite. Do you think maybe I got an email or two about that?
No.
The answer would be yes.
No,
I did.
really? People get offended that easily?
Yeah, I can't imagine why that would be. In any event, we were talking about dads, and I think the whole point of that was there are so many things that I wish that I'd asked my dad about, talked to my dad about, brought up to my dad.
Yep.
And maybe this is me being way too sentimental or way too maudlin.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I wish that I did on his last night, and I was there with Dad at the end, and I was the one that made the phone call to my brother, and I said, I just have a feeling, whatever you're doing, drop everything and fly up here to Sacramento, because I don't have a good feeling, and my other brother was in the area. And so he did. That was the executor of the state. So he flew up here, all three brothers. My mother had already passed away in 2002, so he survived 7 years past her, which is a little unusual.
Very unusual.
With couples of that generation. And so I happened to be unfortunately correct, and all the brothers and all the people that we could get were around his bed that last night. And my wife... no one wants to think about what's going to happen, and I had a complete phase out, I guess, of I'm not dealing with this rationally, and because of that, I screwed myself over, and I may have screwed my dad over in the process. He was losing strength, and it was like, okay, I know he's starting to fade out. And I mean that in terms of he seemed as though he was getting really, really tired, and we were just bothering him.
Right.
So I suggested to everybody, why don't we all just let him sleep for a while, and because I think he needs the time. I think he just needs to sleep. And my wife leaned over to me and said, kiss him goodbye. And I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because I thought, no, this is not going to happen.
Right.
It's not going to happen tonight. It may happen tomorrow. It may happen the next day. It may happen in a week, but not tonight. And at 3:30 in the morning, I got the phone call. And I will never forgive myself for that.
Yeah, that's hard. I can't even imagine.
She was right.
Yeah. Well, and, I think we as guys in some way get that stubbornness of not wanting to deal with certain things that come up. And especially when we know it's something that I think when you're in that moment, and I kind of had the same type of moment, but where you're in your head saying you're fighting it mentally because you don't want to happen.
Yeah, it's denial. It was complete denial on my part.
You can't control it. And you and I have that same kind of type A personality where it's like normally we can get all this stuff squared away and figured out and pushed.
We're the Mars in an incident.
And in this one, there's nothing you can do. And I think that little bit of that denial feeds into it. Sometimes I think it's a defense mechanism, and other times I think it's an offense mechanism.
Situationally dependent, right?
Yeah.
Right? I get that.
Have you ever seen the picture of the 38 where the barrel goes backwards towards
Yes.
the shooter? Sometimes that's what it is.
Yeah.
And for me, like I said, I can remember my dad was sick for a long time and was on dialysis and decided one day he was done. He just didn't want to do dialysis anymore. He was sick of fighting. My mother had taken care of him for years when he lost both of his legs, congestive heart failure, neuropathy, you name it, he had it. And my mother also did it while she was battling cancer. Was taking care of him.
Terrible that must have been.
And I think he got to the point where his personal quality of life was just gone for him. He dealt with a lot of things for years, and being this big strapping guy, he was a cop, and he was my hero growing up, and
he was a type A, and I'm sure he was used to being in control of the situation,
being able to do whatever he wanted to physically, and as that deteriorated, you could see. And he fought for a long time. I mean, he went up and down 15 stairs in the front of the house to go to dialysis 3 days a week on prosthetics in the snow, in the winter, the whole 9 yards, and he still did it. He fought for a long time, decided he was done. So he said he wasn't going to do dialysis. His heart doctor His name's Jack Berg, by the way, who is amazing. He was an amazing doctor, and he and my dad went back for years, and they were like a married couple when they'd fight about things. Jack would say, "Damn it, Bob, you got to do this," and I don't want to do that. You got to do this. So even Jack, he came to the hospital when he obviously heard my father say, "I don't want to do dialysis anymore," was trying to talk him out of it. And you could tell that it was a personal reason and not a professional reason that he was trying to talk. But so it was one of those things that he stopped, and we knew at that point it was only a matter of time. Sepsis sets in, all these different things when you don't have functioning kidneys. And we were coming and going, hanging out. Then my dad kind of, I guess comatose would be the only way to describe it, for a good 16 hours it felt like. And my time may have been a little off because it was so frantic. And we all thought that was it. We really thought he wasn't going to come out of it again. And all of a sudden, he did. And he opened up his eyes, and he was lucid and happy and talking, and he had individual moments with people, told some funny stories. We smuggled beer into the hospital room because he wanted a Guinness, and who was I to say no? I'll never forget the look.
Who are you to say no to something like that?
I will never forget the look on the nurse's face when she walked in, and there's like 10 of us in this hospital room, and we're all drinking Guinness, including my father, who's laying in bed. And the look on her face of like, what am I?
What do I do?
What do I do now? What do I do? Kick out the guy who's literally going to be dead in the next 48 hours drinking a Guinness? Like, what? How are we going to do this?
Yeah, that'll kill you.
Yeah, exactly. It's not good for you, God love her. She didn't say anything to us. And then we all left to handle some things, and it was just my mom and my dad, and that's when he passed away. And part of me was sad that I wasn't there because we'd been at the hospital for what seemed like 3 days. It was probably 2, I think.
Right.
And pretty consistently in the room. And then we left to handle the arrangements that we knew were coming. We actually went to the funeral home.
Right.
And my brother and my sisters and I. And when we got back, we found out he had passed just a few minutes prior. And it was really hard. But on the other hand, the part that I thought was amazing is it was on his terms. He had decided.
Yes.
He decided that it was time. And my mother was with them. And after everything they've been through together, raising me alone, the years of my father being a cop and my mother working, having 4 kids, and busting their asses to make ends meet, going through the illnesses together, the happy times, seeing grandkids, all of that stuff. As much as I would have loved to have been there, I thought it was very, very fitting the way it ended. So it's that bittersweet, where it's just astounding.
I think it's a situation where, at least I believe it was for Dad, he was waiting until he got everyone that at that point was significant in his life. And he had all 3 sons around him, and the wives that were connected, that were available, and the rest of the family that was available that night. And because getting my other brother up here was, that was going to be an issue, and that was taken care of.
And I had somewhat of the same thing. My brother was out in California living, and we had to wait, and we didn't think he was going to make it. And he did. My father waited. We swore that he waited.
Yes, that's precisely my point. Because I think once Dad saw that everybody that was there, because Mom had passed 7 years prior, and once he saw that all the rest of all of his sons were there, and all the rest of the people that he could get there, he was okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they just know, and it's amazing when people.
I'll just know. You'll just know.
Well, maybe not. I may know it's coming, but I may not know at that moment. But I think one of the things you brought up a good point is, being able to ask that question or being able to ask that series of questions. I had a really close relationship with my dad, especially the last few years of his life.
God, get out of my head. Once my mom passed. Mom, I'm sorry for saying this. Wherever you are, if you're watching, if you're listening, I'm sorry to say this. Once you passed away, only then did I really get to understand who Dad was.
Mm-hmm. Well, because there was, you're used to seeing them as a unit, and then you see them as the individual. And I think you naturally become closer to that individual Like my mom and I have always been close, and we have a great relationship. But I think after my dad passed, we got closer. I learned how truly crazy my mom is, which I I thought I knew growing up. Now,
you didn't know shit by half, apparently.
No, but you do. You see that person as the individual. For me, I was off during the day. My dad was home a lot during the day. They lived 10 minutes from me, so I was up spending a lot of time in the afternoons with my dad. I would drive him to and from dialysis. We had a lot of good points to have conversations that we probably wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yes. I was lucky enough to have a few of those myself.
And not always, because I will tell you, too, I was 24, I think, when my dad passed, 25. And even at that age, I was still fearing the inevitable before it happened. I was afraid to know about the dialysis because I knew what it meant. The congestive heart failure. I spent so many nights. My mom can't tell you how many times she drove my dad to the hospital the last couple of years of his life, And when you know it's coming, and especially when it's somebody that is so crucial in your life, when it is that person who is your hero and you looked up to and raised you, and you realize, for me, I did have a lot of regret for all the times that I was an asshole kid, and I stressed him out and not understanding how hard he was working.
My God.
And my mother too, the same thing, because my mother worked the entire time, my whole life, and raised a family, and my father worked and raised a family, and my father would work overtime and details and everything he could just to make ends meet, and then they volunteered for all of our activities, and it was now, as a father, and I look back and I'm like, man, how did he do it with 4? How did she do it with 4, even together? But back then, when you're 14, 15, you don't look at that shit. You just want to be the asshole that you're going to be. And then when I hit that age of about 22, 23, and I was dealing with shithead kids that I used to be, and I was like, damn, like, these people are pretty amazing.
Yes.
How my father didn't put a bullet in me, I'll never know.
Or a boot up my butt.
Well, I got that a bunch of times. And I never got one I didn't deserve. I always tell everyone that. I got a lot of beatings growing up, not one I didn't deserve. Looking back at them, maybe at the time I didn't think I deserved it, but as an adult looking back, I'm like, nah, I probably should have got my ass kicked more than I did, actually. But, driving to and coming from dialysis or doctor's appointments or just sitting up there while he was making lunch, and I can remember my father would wheel himself over and cook his breakfast, and he'd do eggs, and then I can't believe it's not butter in his coffee, and he'd always offer me one, and he didn't want me to cook for him because that was like getting in his way. Like, he had a routine, but that was when I had my moments to ask questions, and sometimes I did and sometimes I didn't. There were sometimes I was afraid to ask a question because we talk about that denial being there, where you're like, well, I have more time. And I think it's my way of saying, like, I don't want to deal with that, so I'm going to tell myself I have more time. And if I ask this question now, well, maybe I'm cutting that time out later, because I know he wants to answer that question. I know he wants to tell me about this.
You don't want to face the fact that, okay, I really am going to have to come to terms with the fact that he's not going to be in my life, and it might be pretty soon, and I'd rather think about something else.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. So, I'd make some stupid joke or tell a work story or whatever, and we just start bullshitting about something totally different. For me, I had the opportunity to work with a bunch of people that my dad worked with. Not a lot, but a decent amount.
That would have been way, way cool.
And to hear stories about my dad being told from other people, and I had heard stories about my dad from my dad. I had heard stories from my dad from a couple of his close friends. But to hear other people outside talk about my dad was really amazing. And, I can remember one of the guys I worked with, Billy Rowe, sitting on an overnight shift, a late shift, and he would tell me stories all the time about my dad. And even after he passed. And I was always thankful that. I worked a guy named Vic Serrana, who passed away too young as well, but he grew up with my dad, essentially. He was my dad's partner for a while, and they worked together. Vic would tell me stories about my dad. John Amaral was another one who would tell me stories about my dad, and John was young, and my father, was already on the job when John came on. To get that legacy from a third-person point of view, so to speak, was just astounding.
And the people that gave you that highly important insight, like the second or third person, not directly attached, but that kind of insight, which is so invaluable that it becomes so personally important to you to know that I loved my dad. I respected my dad. I heard some stories about my dad.
Oh, yeah.
On the other hand, here's all these people over here. They're saying the exact same thing, telling me what a great guy he was, and here's the experiences that they had with him. That's invaluable. You'll never get that again.
I can remember I had one guy say to me, hey, your old man and I didn't get along really, really well. But I always thought he was fair. I always thought that he was good. And I always thought that he did everything for the right reason. And even that, to have somebody say, hey, he and I didn't jive too well, but that doesn't affect the opinion of what he did and how he did it and who he was as a person.
That's right. And the fact that even though they didn't agree, he still respected the man.
Yeah. I thought that was just amazing. And I can remember having a long conversation, being thankful with that person, because it says a lot, you know. But, I got a lot of information from my dad. I asked a lot of questions. There's a lot of stuff that he wouldn't talk about. You know, I think I've told you this off air, and I'm going to tell this story, and some people are going to laugh, and other people are going to think they're crazy. My mom swears to God my father could speak Russian.
Okay.
My father was in the Air Force during the Vietnam War.
Okay.
He alleges that he was in the weather service. I forget which Air Force base. It was somewhere in Nebraska. God. I'll remember it later.
Okay.
But, and when he and my mom were together, he'd be gone for an extended period of time and come home and leave occasionally gone. But my mom said later on in life that he would dream and talk in his sleep, and he was speaking Russian.
Okay.
But my father was one of those people who would be, he was told never to say anything about something, he wouldn't.
Yeah, and that was part and parcel of that generation and the greatest generation, because there was still the written and unwritten rule that if you were given an order, then you took it to heart and you carried it out. Yes.
And you got to think of people may or may not remember in Vietnam, Russia was heavily involved in the North Vietnamese.
Correct.
And so, yeah, maybe he was checking the weather in Russia. I don't know.
Maybe he wasn't doing that at all.
Or maybe he wasn't doing that at all, which has always been my kind of take on that for a lot of different reasons. But it just seems really, I know my old man, and I know if it was like, hey, you can never talk about this again. Oh, okay. And I've had a lot of people like, well, you could write and find out and blah, blah. And I'm going to someday. I'm actually just still kind of not ready, which sounds crazy all these years later. But anyone who knows me personally knows that I still have some issues with my father's passing.
To this day, next year it'll be 10 years since my father has passed, and after 10 years, I'm still having a little bit of a time dealing with it.
Yeah.
If for no other reason than 10 years ago, it seems like last February.
Yeah, mine will be 15 years next year, next August. A year will be 15.
And still, I'll wager, it's still fairly fresh in your mind.
Yeah, and so that's the funny part is, certain things, obviously, time makes it easier, and certain things, time makes it harder. But I can recall certain conversations with my father like they were yesterday, because my father was a great storyteller, and my father was very much commanded a room if he wanted to and was speaking, and he just had a booming voice or whatever. But I can and not even serious conversations. A lot of times it was his humor, because he had a sick sense of humor. He really had a sick. He was a sick man.
He's a cop. What do you expect? What do we do? What kinds of humor do we have?
Jokes, the whole 9 yards. I there's a couple stories I wish I could tell, but I know people alive that were involved in it that would kill me if I ever did.
Yeah.
But. And I can remember to this day hearing those stories for the 15th time out of my father's mouth and laughing just as hard on the 15th time as I did on the first time. Because the first time I was probably too young and didn't understand. And just to see his brain and his guile and his wit at work, as you get older and you realize that your old man just isn't some guy who's telling you to clean your room or go to school or whatever, that there is this character that's buried inside, this person that's buried inside, that as you get older, you actually learn to appreciate. Like I have with my mom, too, the same thing. My mom's an amazing woman, and I do have that same ability now. You know, one of my biggest regrets.
I know she's listening. Hello, Mrs. L.
Yes.
So we say
she
hello.
does listen.
We say hello here at Sackheads Against Tyranny.
And if she can't stay up late because she's on the East Coast, she watches and listens the next day. But you know, for me, I think my biggest regret is my dad never met my kids. I can see how that would be just incredibly important, incredibly significant. Yeah, and that's something that I'll always carry with me. On the other hand, he had been fortunate enough to meet most of my other nieces and nephews, which is great because they're able to share those stories as my kids get older about my dad. And you know, luckily my mom, you know, we just spent 2 weeks with my mom, so my kids do know that. But it is amazing the things that still stick with you after an extended period of time, and good and bad. Sometimes certain things cause closure, and then there are other times that I find things open up those wounds again, and you're like, wow, why is this bothering me right now? And it's not just because I've been drinking. Right? That never happens. Who the hell gets emotional when they're drinking?
No one here in this room.
But I guess kids, what I'm saying is you know, especially your older loved ones, like I do with BZ every week. You know, you talk and you ask questions, and you know, knowing that it's right around the corner, and it's anytime now. Anytime now.
It is anytime now.
You want to get that?
I'm waiting for my factory-issued heart attack. Don't think.
It's like when you stop talking, we check your pulse. You don't know it, but we do. We're like, ah, shit, somebody's going to have to clean this up.
You know how tough it's going to be for the body snatchers to put me on that gurney? Those poor bastards are going to say, this fucker should have eaten a lot less.
I'm gonna get them on speed dial to call me first before they do the move. Because I'm just going to sit there laughing and be like, he knew this was going to happen, you poor bastards. He knew. He did this on purpose. He told me to kick you guys in the ass as you're walking by carrying him.
Well, I think we're actually going to have to take a break.
Okay.
When we do, we're going to come back and actually get perhaps to some politics.
Why?
Since we just blew through 1 hour of Sunbeam Tigers and BARs.
And the other reason I brought up the Austin Healey, we were trying to figure that out, is my father drove back from the Air Force and an Austin Healey that he had bought with the electric overdrive, and he used to tell me he wished he never got rid of that car and the Camaro.
Oh God! Talk about stories for another day. Like, you know, the cars that got away.
Oh God! Yeah.
The stuff in your childhood that got away.
Oh yeah, I had a chance at a GTO when I was 16, and I just didn't pull the trigger. I know.
Amazing stuff, folks. Don't go anywhere. Come. We're going to be right back, I swear it.
We'll be back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capitol, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through shrmedia.com, highplainstalkradio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Hey guys, it's Sackhead Clint. I'm excited to tell you about a brand new show here on the SHR Media Network. I'm teaming up with the one and only all-powerful, the bloviating Zeppelin sitting here to my left, bringing to you a fresh new show here on the network. It's Against Tyranny. And we'll be picking up where the Sackheads left off. Excited to be with you, sir.
Sackheads Against Tyranny.
We're going to chat. We're going to chat Wednesday nights. Sackheads Against Tyranny.
Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Oh, it's the same time, right? 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific.
Same SAC time, same SAC channel.
Yeah. SHRmedia.com.
See what I did there?
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
Hey, BZ. So the plan's working. You got rid of Sacco. Sean is now stepping away.
I never even saw him.
And I know, and insidious. You know, we talked about this for, for the last 3 years. And finally coming to fruition.
You know I'm still in the room, right?
It's almost like he's here still. Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's kind of.
It's amazing. It's kind of
at you.
It's kind of eerie.
Kind of a poltergeist.
Like a poltergeisty thing.
Yeah, Sackheads Against Tyranny.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Oh my God, the second hour already. Holy moly, where did the time go? It flew. This is a nice one too.
Break it down. To Chinatown. Welcome back to Sackheads Against Tyranny. Thank you so much for joining us. So I know we were closing out the last one, but I got a quick story.
We got to hear it.
So I immediately we go to break, and I get a text from my mother.
My sainted mother.
My sainted mother. All I get is, ha, 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 I'm crazy, ?
So she is listening.
I said, hell yes. Am I wrong? I said, so wait. So I got the typical... and I know I'm going to piss off all of our female listeners, but I just got womaned 110%. I went through about how amazing my mom is, how hard she worked, how she took care of my...
I was here. Right? I listened to it.
We have video of it, the whole 9 yards. What does she hone in on? The crazy comment.
Yep.
And I didn't even say crazy in a bad way, like she's, killing puppies. I just meant she's a little cuckoo, and it's in a good way. It really is. My mother's the type of person to tell the Pope to go fuck himself if she thought it was the right thing to do. Like, that's just how she is. But I just thought it was funny that I was like, son of a bitch, I give you all these compliments, and then you're going to shit on me for the crazy comment, and then she's yelling at me for dancing coming back for break. I'm done.
See,
I'm done.
That's my point exactly. You see, you never know who's listening and when, and now okay. You are being listened to.
Oh,
and it's not just the NSA either.
Not just the NSA. Let's start going down the list, my friend. We do have politics to get to at some point in this fucking show. Let's start off with the Ginsburg rule, because
that goes on the back of that. Brett Kavanaugh was nominated on Monday for SCOTUS.
Yes,
and even before the nomination came, the LDAM decided that they were going to pop a cork. And as I've said, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that said this, he could have nominated the Pope, or Jesus, and they would have come out and said something negative. You know, it's wrong that only a certain few should have the ability to walk on water, or we never liked that guy's tall hat anyway. They would have found something terrible to say about either one of those
His
guys.
robe is way too white.
That's right, and
we all know when people wear white robes.
And you know, it's like Amy Coney Barrett is like, the dogma sings loudly in you, Jesus. Or
By the way, apparently,
the Catholic dogma sings too loudly in you, Pope.
Apparently, Jane Butcher also only heard me call my mother crazy and ignored the rest of it, too. So everyone's blowing me up right now. God damn it.
I find that amusing. I'm sorry.
I know.
I just do. But we had to predicate the Ginsburg rule in terms of what just happened on Monday.
Yes.
And I'm listening to CNN. I don't know why, but I am. And the stuff that's coming, it's like, do you hear the word that are coming out of my mouth? You can't believe the things that are coming out of the mouth of CNN.
First and foremost, you listen to CNN. Why
he's going to kill he's going to kill chickens, and he's going to kill kittens, and he's going to. Well, of course, we all know that he's going to kill babies,
right?
He's going to kill everyone.
Well, no,
and women. He's going to kill women.
He's not going to kill babies. That's part of their problem.
Well, that's okay. Good point.
And potentially, and that brings us to the Ginsburg rule. Roe versus Wade has blown up with the Kavanaugh nomination.
Yeah,
that's been the biggest one. People have been tweeting, Roe versus Wade is going to die immediately. This, that, and the other thing. First and foremost, people, you need to understand how the Supreme Court works.
And they don't. They really don't.
They don't just sit there and decide what cases to open and close. There would have to be a legal precedence in order for the Roe versus Wade decision to be brought all the way back up to them. That means it would have to be challenged in a local court and start, or a state court and start working its way back up, or a federal court. And then,
leftists do not want you to know that. They don't want you to know how things actually work.
If the court chooses to hear it, depending on what's being challenged, they may not have the ability to throw out the entirety of Roe versus Wade. They may have the ability to make a ruling on a specific language or a specific interpretation. Just because Kavanaugh has been nominated does not mean this law's. And look, we're going to play a Ginsburg clip in a little bit. They call it the Ginsburg rule, and I agree with what she says 100%.
Exactly.
As
long as it's evenly applied.
Yes. When we're vetting our Supreme Court justices, look, you can go into their case history and see how they ruled. You can see if they've always upheld the legal standard. You can see if they've been a fair judge. You can see a lot of things. You can go into their moral background. Has he been a good person? Has she been a good person? Are they barbecuing kittens for pastime? Or do they volunteer every single weekend at a group home trying to help kids get on the right? You can go into that. You can talk about how he made this one Facebook comment back in 2007, that has been grossly misinterpreted, but yet they're going to exploit it anyhow. All these different things that we've seen with different nominations, they have the right to do. However, you cannot specifically ask, and I don't think it is prudent of a Senate to ask specifically, what would you do in this situation?
And they have.
Because that is unfair to a Democrat or appointee, a nomination, or a conservative. Does not matter, right? What you need to find out is, do they understand the law? Will they uphold it appropriately? Even if it's their interpretation, I don't agree with their interpretation. Are they following the guidelines? Have they followed the guidelines? Do they have the right legal training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Now, this could bite us in the ass as conservatives in 8 years or whatever if you have conservatives start retiring. But,
exactly. And the other thing is, there's no guarantee that when installing a new jurist that they're going to go the way that you expected them to go when you made that nomination. And
But
a perfect example is Justice Souter.
Yeah.
As soon as he came in, Souter almost immediately started leaning to the left. He was no swing vote. You had a pretty damn good idea which way he was going to go.
Right now you kind of
John Roberts.
Roberts is the big one now, right? Look at Obamacare. Look at the decision on Obamacare a couple of years ago.
That was out of his ass. That was out of left field.
No, nobody expected it.
And yet, so these people are people. They're fallible, and they can go whichever way they feel at the time that they feel like crafting their opinion. And you can't pigeonhole them entirely.
Well,
that can't and shouldn't be done.
The other thing that you have to look at too with a lot of these people is when they're crafting their opinion on a case, even if it goes against what their values are, if it's meeting the legal precedents to stay or go a different direction, then and they follow that, that's a possibility too. And we've seen that we've seen that a few times recently. And you have to understand that that's part of it. The problem is these Senate confirmation hearings, especially for Supreme Court justices and other positions, we see it a lot with cabinet members, have become political folly. It's used for the next election, not for the appointment. Look, they know that Kavanaugh's probably at this point a 98% chance of getting in. They have the numbers as long as you get all the conservatives to actually show up, and I'm sure a couple Democrats will, especially for elections.
I think it's going to go, my prediction, I'm going to say 54 or 55.
Oh, I think it's going to get 60.
Oh, you really? Okay.
I think you have a couple. I think you have a couple of Democrats who are in historically red districts who are coming up for election.
Well, and serious public threats essentially have been made to them by Dick Durbin, if no one else, saying that essentially we expect you to take it up we're going to pound it up your ass, and we expect you to vote the way we tell you. And if you lose your seat in the meantime, oh well,
too bad.
It's like Magnum Force. Sacrifices have to be made, mister.
And we've talked about this. Yeah, it's a great movie. We've talked about this in a lot of different places where you have these guys and these gals in the Senate and the House who are voting the party versus what is the right thing to do, what their constituents want.
Bingo, what their constituents are looking for.
Right. And you have to remember the Senate is supposed to represent states' rights, not people, not the individual. That's the House.
That's the House.
The House deals with that. Even though they've changed that to now we have the direct election of senators, that doesn't change the fact that the senators are supposed to deal with the state rights. That's what they're supposed to be serving. That's their people. That's why there's 2 to a state versus districted out like the House.
Yes, more local. The assumption is more localized, more local control. We can theoretically access our representatives much easier.
But people forget that. They think that the senators work for the people directly, and they're not. They're there on a state level. They used to be appointed, if I'm not mistaken, before the 19th Amendment, they were appointed by states. I believe it was the state house or the state legislature that would appoint them, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, there's so many people that have no idea how government functions.
And that's the big difference, too. So now you have a Senate that's confirming a Supreme Court justice that is not supposed to be representing Roe versus Wade per se, but the states' right issues when they're putting them in the Supreme Court. That's something, I mean, they have to look at all the issues, but that's what they're supposed to be concerned about.
Well, look,
it's the
look
balance
at it this
of
way.
power.
Look at it this way. What's the worst thing that could happen out of the Supreme Court with regard to Roe versus Wade? And that's this. They could say, we're going to push that down to the states. And even allowing the states to weigh in on this is completely anathema to the LDAM. They don't want that to happen.
Yes.
They don't want states' rights.
Yes.
So, are you kidding me? I guess they love the 10th Amendment.
Until it doesn't suit them.
Until it doesn't suit them. And then we need the federal government until we want states' rights.
Look at California right now with weed, right? The FDIC won't allow weed businesses to bank within the FDIC. If you're an FDIC-insured bank, they won't let you touch marijuana.
Yeah, so what's the state of California
So
doing?
the state of California, who normally absolutely loves huge government, has said, well, we're going to make our own banks.
Yeah, we're going to get into the banking business.
Right, which is exactly what this state should be
Sure,
doing.
that's what you need.
But it amazes me how when the 10th applies and when it doesn't apply. Right now, the state wants to make all this money off weed, so the 10th doesn't apply. Oh, you can't, or it does apply. You can't tell us what to do. Well, do you want your money FDIC insured? I don't give a shit if it is or it isn't. That's up to the bank. But I'll tell you something right now. If you're the weed, those banks or the state bank that's going to get opened is going to be targeted heavily. And you know they are. FinCEN is going to be all over them. And the first time they're out...
Why would you not?
Right.
You'd be stupid if you didn't.
But so I bring up marijuana for a reason, and I'm glad you went to California. You know, so many people are against Kavanaugh where it's like, well, what if he comes out that he's pro-marijuana? And he's like, let's start challenging this. Will the left all of a sudden go, oh, shit. Kamala Harris, who I'm protesting and I won't even take the president's call about this. She denied the president's call. Such a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden it's like, hey, Kamala, your state that you represent, kind of, if this guy supported marijuana and allowing it, where are you going to be then? Because you represent the state. You're a senator. You're not a representative.
Well, they're humans and they can change.
Yeah.
And that's the big deal. Well, let's go back specifically to the Ginsburg rule. And what is the Ginsburg rule? At the heart of this is what folks call the Ginsburg rule. And it's a term that is a phrase that gets bandied about in confirmation hearings when you're dealing with answering questions from representatives, from senators and whatnot, and that the Ginsburg rule is something like, well, nominees have to stay away from making specific hints or forecasts or predictions or previews about what they're going to do when you install them.
Right.
And you made mention of a piece from Ginsburg, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I'd like to play that now. And you and I both agree that what she says and what you're going to hear is exactly how things should be. It isn't, but listen to her and what she says in reply to being questioned by the Senate for her confirmation on SCOTUS.
You are well aware that I come to this proceeding to be judged as a judge, not as an advocate. Because I am and hope to continue to be a judge, it would be wrong for me to say or to preview in this legislative chamber how I would cast my vote on questions the Supreme Court may be called upon to decide.
Okay, now stop right there.
Yes.
That's exactly correct. That is a proper application and usage, and that's what ought to be coming out of the mouths of all the people that sit in front of senators in terms of confirmation hearings. Well, so she got away with it. Why does no one else, air quotes, get away with it?
Well, and you see headlines, Wall Street Journal, a couple other places. The Ginsburg rule should not apply. Well, why?
Why?
Why? Because it's against your narrative. And it is fine. And look, if you want to know...
It's proper.
It's 100% proper. And it's so easy to know what a justice is going to do. You go and look at their case history. It's a no-brainer. We knew... everybody, well, with the exception, there are some people that flip-flop back and forth, but you have an idea of what kind of justice are going to be by who appoints them. Shocker. What kind of cases they've run in the back in their history. Shocker. And you look at the last two appointees, well, there was no doubt about it, right? We all knew what Gorsuch was. And yeah, and he may go occasionally against what everyone thinks he's going to do. It's his right as a jurist. But overall, you can tell which way these justices will vote depending on their case history.
Well, the other thing that she's trying to say, you know what? I'll tell you what. Maybe I should just back up and let her continue to talk and say, because she was making an excellent point herself.
Were I to rehearse here what I would say and how I would reason on such questions, I would act injudiciously. Judges in our system are bound to decide concrete cases, not abstract issues.
Bingo.
Yes.
Bing, bing, bing. Each case is different.
Yes.
And because there are so many variables in each case, she's precisely correct.
Case comes to court based on particular facts, and its decision should turn on those facts and the governing law stated and explained in light of the particular arguments the parties or their representatives present. A judge sworn to decide impartially can offer no forecasts, no hints, for that would show not only disregard for the specifics of the particular case, it would display disdain for the entire judicial process.
See, wouldn't you think now that a few excerpts out of that would make an excellent series of promos for the GOP or for the Republicans? This is good enough for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This is the standard to which she was held. Why is it that no one else, particularly with regard to perceived or actual conservatives, why are they not held to the identical standard? The answer is we know why.
Politics.
It's politics and fucking it's kabuki theater.
It is kabuki theater. And look, I'm looking at Town Hall right now. One could argue that notorious Ruth Bader Ginsburg totally screwed over liberals on SCOTUS. Yes, twice, actually, because not only the Ginsburg rule right now that's going to come back and screw liberals,
yeah,
but she did not strategically retire under Obama and allow the appointment. Because Obama appointed two, right? Sotomayor and
Kagan.
Elena Kagan. Both younger jurists are probably going to have the next 20 years on there.
Sure.
You look,
and that's what you want.
Right. And Ginsburg was, 80 at the time when Obama was still in office?
Yeah.
Could have easily retired and given that seat for the next 20 years, but chose not to. And now what's going to happen is she's most likely going to retire under the Trump administration.
You want to hear something that, God, I wish.
She's 85 right now, 84?
Yeah, she's in her 80s. Here's something. God, who said this? There was somebody, it was a law professor, but it wasn't Dershowitz, who said that in their opinion, and I've said this and I will continue to say it, Trump, I believe, before the end of his first term is going to have the ability to make three appointments.
Amy Coney Barrett's going to be the next one.
Yep, she is, guaranteed, especially if this guy goes through, and I think he will. I say 55, you say 60.
I say 60.
So we'll remember that. But the other aspect of that is this individual was saying, you know what, before 2020, I think he's going to get 4 opportunities. If
7-3,
Donald John Trump, the guy with the dead orange cat on his head, gets to come in and make 4 nominations for SCOTUS.
You're looking at 7-3 solid.
To let's see, to George Will, and to Bill Kristol, and all the rest of the Never-Trumpers, and I've lost friends who were Never-Trumpers who call me crazy. I only have 2 words for all of you. Fuck you.
Yeah. Well, and BZ, how long did we talk about going into that election? The most important thing about not electing Hillary Clinton was the Supreme Court. We looked at ages. We looked at retirement.
Yep.
Scalia was unexpected because of his untimely passing. So it was crucial as a conservative, putting on my political hat versus my jurist hat or my legal hat. It was critical to have somebody who was more in line with conservative values. He's going to get 3. There's no doubt. He could get 4.
I believe that, but if it's another, we got to go to a break, and I'm going to throw this out as the finally. It's another if-then equation.
Yes. If
what
then?
President Trump does get a 3rd, and we're seeing this kind of civil unrest now,
What'll happen
and
with
he
the
gets a
fourth?
third, and then what's the potentiality for a fourth?
Yep.
If you think this nation is upside down right now, you give a third and a fourth vacancy to President Trump and see what happens then. Holy crap.
Conservative media done
The world's on
right.
fire!
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capitol, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
When dirty politicians, shadow governments, and deceptive Islam blind the world with fake stream media smoke, their only fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through shrmedia.com, highplanestalkradio.com, and the Western Free Radio Network at Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes for a different perspective weekly on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Hey guys, it's Sackhead Clint. I'm excited to tell you about a brand new show here on the SHR Media Network. I'm teaming up with the one and only all-powerful, the bloviating Zeppelin sitting here to my left, bringing to you a fresh new show here on the network. It's Against Tyranny. And we'll be picking up where the Sackheads left off. Excited to be with you, sir.
Sackheads against tyranny.
We're going to chat. We're going to chat Wednesday nights.
S-H-A-T.
Sackheads Against Tyranny.
Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Oh, it's the same time, right? 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific.
Same SAC time, same SAC channel.
Yep. shrmedia.com.
See what I did there?
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Human by race, Christian by faith, American by nationality, and conservative by choice. Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. is the right guy on SHR Media from 8:05 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if on the rare occasion I am ever wrong, I will still always be right. The right guy on SHR Media.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
Hey, BZ. So the plan's working. You got rid of Sacco. Sean is now stepping away.
I never even saw him.
And I know, and insidious. You know, we talked about this for, for the last 3 years. And finally coming to fruition.
You know I'm still in the room, right?
It's almost like he's here still. Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's kind of.
It's amazing. It's kind of
at you.
It's kind of eerie.
Kind of a poltergeist.
Like a poltergeisty thing.
Yeah, Sackheads Against Tyranny.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
That's it. It's the final 25 minutes. here on the Sackheads Against Tyranny show with Sackhead Sean in the chair tonight.
Hi.
What a wonderful thing it is to see him back in full force.
Yes, I am.
In full throat. Now, we cannot continue to expect this, but we have to take our blessings wherever we find them, and I think it's a blessing, and I'm having a hell of a time. The first hour was like Sackhead's family weepy hour.
It was.
But we got into some really interesting things.
Got a little mushy.
That needed to be said, and now we're into the political thing. We spent the first half hour of the second hour basically talking about SCOTUS. I know. I had to think about that before I say it. Thinking about SCOTUS, how it breaks down, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Ginsburg rule. Now, you made an excellent series of points on the break.
Yes.
That I think
I always do.
Man, you always do. Hey, listen, I'm just admitting the truth. I'm just placing them right there in facts and evidence.
Glad I can
but
help.
I think that the folks here need to hear it.
Well, I was also bringing up local federal courts. The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court. It is the highest court in the land. It is very, very important to this, the balance. But what makes the Supreme Court so busy, if you will, is you have courts like the Ninth. And the Ninth, yes, the
Bingo.
Ninth District right down here in San Francisco. D.C. is another one. I think that's the third. Is it the third in D.C.?
The third is an extremely important appellate. Well, the DC DCA is where a bunch of future SCOTUS people have come from, including this guy Kavanaugh came from the DC DCA as well.
But you go back to the Ninth. The Ninth is one of the most heavily appealed circuit courts.
They're so
because they're insanely liberal.
Oh my God! That and the fourth.
The fourth is the one I was thinking of, not the third, the fourth. But the Ninth's the worst. But what's happening is if you start looking at the ages of some of the judges that are up there and some of the vacancies they already have, I think they have a couple as we speak.
Yes, they do.
Trump has the ability to fill those.
Yep.
Potentially, he could flip the Ninth Circuit Court by the time he is out of office. Now, think about that. A lot of the leftist agenda that was making it to the Supreme Court, where Roberts would have the ability to go one way or the other, we'd never know which way depending on what it was, would come out of the Ninth and the third. You eliminate the Ninth, and states like California that have been running crazy because California, as we all know, the left runs it. They have the Assembly, they have the Senate, and the governorship.
It is a supermajority, period.
And when they pass a bullshit law, which they do all the time, and it gets tested in court and it gets sent to the Ninth always upholds the state.
Rubber stamp it.
Like it's nothing because it's the same. The Ninth Circuit Court might as well be called the California Court of Appeals because it's absolutely crazy. Now, for states like California especially, where it is the liberal petri dish of liberal knowledge. They test everything here first for the most part.
This is experiment central.
Experiment central. So you get that. Now you change that. You start having the state of California lose cases. You start having more conservative cases being held up, or I should say cases that are more in line with the Constitution. Well, that stops a lot of the bullshit right there. That stops a ton of the bullshit right there. All these people who get mad about SCOTUS decisions, it goes away because there's always going to be SCOTUS decisions. But when you have the Ninth, that is the most heavily appealed district court federally, start changing, because what happens is a lot of the stuff is conservatives who are appealing it up to the Supreme Court after the Ninth. And a lot of times what happens is it'll go to the Supreme Court and they'll say, no, this isn't ours. The Ninth has to rule on this and send it back down, whether they want to or not. And this would actually be huge. And not just the Ninth. There's other districts out there that there's a lot of judgeships opening right now, a lot of federal judgeships.
Already Trump has had predominantly some of the greatest number of lower court judgeships and appellate court judgeships open to him to fill than many presidents in recent times. And you make an excellent point about the Ninth. You make an excellent point about the Fourth. Now, my point was this. and we were talking about this off air on the break. I'm predicting, and I've said this for a while, that Donald John Trump is going to get a third SCOTUS pick even before the end of 2020. Now, we can see what kind of a fight is occurring now. Can you imagine what kind of loins would have to be girded if there was a third SCOTUS vacancy? Because if you think they're fighting now, the leftists are fighting for their very lives as far as they're concerned.
Yeah.
Now, could you imagine if there was a third vacancy? And even as I heard one particular, he was a law professor, and it wasn't Dershowitz. I can't, God, it's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of this guy's name. But essentially what he was postulating is he thinks it's not entirely impossible that President Trump gets a fourth nomination, that there will be a fourth vacancy in his term. And that will literally, as you well pointed out on the break, you stood up and you walked over to go take a smoke break, and as you were leaving, you said 7-3, 7-3, 7-3. Well, actually, it would be 7-2 because 7 and 3 is 10. But I knew what you meant. You're not a math professor, but I knew exactly what it was that you meant. It's like during the past 8 years, what's it always been? Most recently, especially with Kennedy, everything that's important has been 5-4, 5-4, 5-4, 5-4, 5-4 for a long time. Well, what the hell happens if you do get 7-2, 6-4, 7-2, 6-4, 7-2, 6-3? And see, I'm a bad mathematician too. 7-2,
7-3.
But what happens then
6-4,
if
7-3.
if that occurs?
Well,
now, if the thought that I proffered was, if the leftists are acting in this way now, and I don't think they're paying attention to the lower courts. I don't think they're paying attention to the appellate courts because I don't see the LDAM going crazy over that. So somehow that's escaped their radar.
Right.
That having been said, now, seeing what's happening with regard to the Democrats and the leftists and the American media maggots, when there are two openings and literally the violence is popping off on all so many levels. What kind of violence? In other words, when you close
Look at Portland.
off. Well, yeah, exactly. When you it's going to get down to this. Leftists will not be able to win the rational, logical argument. So
they go violent.
They're losing arguments. So then they've lost arguments. Well, then they're in the process of potentially losing education. And they're also in the process of potentially losing voters with the
redistricting?
No, the new hashtag.
Oh,
walk away.
Walk away.
And walk away. I'm writing a blog post, which is probably going to come out sometime later this week that I'm going to talk about on my show. There are a lot of people that are starting to walk away from the Democrat Party. So what if that continues and they start to lose lower courts and they start to lose SCOTUS? So they've lost the argument. They've lost logic. They're in the process of potentially losing education. They're in the process of potentially losing voters. And they're in the process of losing the courts. What other avenue, as far as they're concerned, do they have? And we know, history has shown, they will take this route.
Well, look at any single time. I go back to the election cycle, right, what we saw in San Jose and some other places during the election. After the election, when they lost, the amount of rioting and all these other things that was going on, right? Once again, the violent left. It's the violent left. We can say it time and again. When you had people trying to speak at Berkeley that were invited there, and there was rioting and chaos and insanity, the violent left. You look at Portland right now, Antifa. There's nothing going on per se other than them just being Antifa, fighting with the police, fighting with I forget the name of the motorcycle group, but it's like God's Arms or something like that. It's a conservative group. But they were going to have a protest, and Antifa did a counter-protest, and it turned out to be this crazy fight. You saw Antifa in Boston a couple months ago shut down the freedom of speech rally or whatever it was, with thousands of Antifa members showing up and thousands of leftists showing up.
We had that here in Sacramento.
We had it
we
here in
had
Sacramento.
freeways shut down. CHP couldn't stop these fucktards from getting on the freeways and shutting down the on-ramps to various portions or off-ramps to various portions of I-5, and then they bled out onto I-5 itself, a major north-south thoroughway in all of California over a BLM incident, over a shooting from SAC PD. So in their minds, the only thing they have, and they can justify it all day long, is when all else fails, when all legal avenues fail, we are completely justified in using whatever violence we see fit.
We will break whatever rule. We will destroy whatever property. We will hurt whoever gets in our way. Look at socialists, Democrats, fascists. They've always done this sort of thing. As soon as they lose the argument, because then they're out of argument. They have nothing left. They have no other ability to try to win.
And we remove the other venues that I just talked about.
And look at who is, we speak, I just brought up socialist, and Antifa is obviously a socialist movement, which socialism's diet communism. Anyone who doesn't know that, the difference between socialism and communism is the boot to your neck or the threat against your well-being. Socialism, they're just taking it and mildly threatening you. Communism, they're putting the boot to the neck and taking it. But there is, we had that lunatic in New York, in the Bronx there, who is a self-avowed socialist, come out and get...
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes, but there was another representative, or might have been a senator, who claimed that she was a democratic socialist, which just means... you're a socialist.
You're a socialist.
You can throw that cute little.
All you did is throw Democrat on the front of it.
Right. You could throw that cute little word at the beginning of it. But she was speaking at some sort of event this past weekend. I'm trying to pull up her name really quick because I can't think of it. And she's been around forever. She's a pretty prominent leftist. I can't think of her name right now, but I'll find it later. But she came out over the weekend and she's like, "Yeah, I'm a democratic socialist."
Because now it's starting to be cool
to
do that.
Now you have to be to get elected. You have to be. Look at Bernie's a democratic socialist, and they had to screw him to keep him from getting elected. Right? The tide is turning where they're coming out and more saying, we can't have this again because we need to get into power. Speaking of power, you brought this up too. Hill Dog's talking about a 2020 run.
Yeah, during last night's show, I put that under happy stories and good times. And the reason I did is because if you really want to trot out all these varicose-veined...
They don't.
Elder, senior, whatever the hell you call of these folks, statesmen. You want to trot out Joe Biden.
Hillary and Biden 2020.
Bring out Slow Joe.
Yeah.
You want to bring out Pocahontas. Donald Trump is already on. He's offered $1 million
for her DNA,
for someone to somehow acquire her DNA and have her take a test.
Yeah.
And he'll pay him $1 million because already American Indians have said that she isn't.
Yep.
She's not.
Nope.
And this is just a crutch.
And
it's like Rachel Dolezal. It's like
who just went to jail for something.
Let's see, what's the thing I used to say on the back of VW transporter vehicles in the 60s or in the 70s? Disco is to art, or disco is to music as Etch-a-Sketch is to art. And Pocahontas is to an Indian as Rachel Dolezal is to a black.
Yes. By the way,
that's what passes for that's just fine.
Rachel
today.
Dolezal just got indicted on fraud charges, by the way. So that's good news for you.
That's so sad.
As did the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, who was...
Yeah, I did a post on that.
Yeah.
And she was the one that was skewering the crap out of Trump when it turns out that the supplies were not getting to where they needed because as everyone already knows, Puerto Rico is corrupt as batfuck.
Yes.
And as we all know, batfuck is really
extremely
corrupt.
Extremely corrupt. Look, the leftists are just shooting themselves in the foot more. I do agree with you. I think there will be more violence. I think there's going to be a lot of protest and rioting when Kavanaugh is nominated, when he's confirmed, which he will be.
I believe he will.
And then there will be protests and rioting then. Antifa will lose their mind. The people who are talking about Roe versus Wade right now, like I said, there has to be a reason for him to actually make a decision before you can just say, he can't just come in, sit down and say, we're done with Roe versus Wade and move on. It doesn't work that way.
As far as leftists are concerned, that's how it's portrayed. And that literally, that's how simple they are in their minds. And that's how they understand it, because that's all they're told. And that's all they want to hear.
Speaking of Roe versus Wade, Governor Cuomo.
Oh, God.
Governor Cuomo has come out and he said, if Roe versus Wade is overturned, he is going to sue in order to have it turned back. However, let's follow the governor's logic on this. You have the Supreme Court maybe overturning Roe versus Wade, right? If that happens, you now have Cuomo filing a lawsuit that will get appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court, who will overturn it again. So what Cuomo is saying is he would rather spend all of this money, time, in court systems to get fucked twice.
Well, I think in his mind, SCOTUS isn't enough. There needs to be a final court. There's the final court.
Why can't we bring
Then there ought to be a final court.
There is a final court, and you and I both know this. They will start dealing with the World Court and the UN. That's the ultimate Democrat, socialist, no border motherfuckers. That's what they want. People tried at The Hague. They want all these globalist mentality people to make decisions. Look, you have all of these senators and representatives who are coming out and leftists coming out saying, yeah, we don't really believe in borders. That is, of course, the next step.
Well, and we want to eliminate ICE. We've got to eliminate
Well, we have
ICE.
to eliminate ICE, because if we have ICE, that enforces the borders.
Yeah.
But you've had a couple people come out and say, well, we don't need borders. What do we need borders for?
Well, and the bleat now, if you go to the, let's see, what's she a member of? There's somebody else that's a member of the Washington or the New York Metro Democratic Socialist
I love this
Party. And the line of that particular party is no bail.
Yes.
No borders.
Yes.
Yeah, there's more. They want to eliminate ICE. And,
common sense.
And no prisons. That's right. I
well,
forgot.
I mean, let's be honest. Do you really need a prison?
Why do you need a prison? You really don't need a prison. Your mind is good enough. Your mind can be a prison. So what do you need? You really don't need prisons. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And this is what passes this is what is soon to pass as the state of the art in leftists. Well, okay, let's back up. I suggest this, though. Let's back up and take a more global photograph of what's going on now across the Atlantic. The UK is struggling with Brexit. Theresa May is struggling with what to do. She's trying to be as much of an obstructionist as possible with regard to Brexit, and that's about to bite her in the ass. Angela Merkel, who let in close to 2 million Muslim, and I'll specifically say it, not Anglican Catholics or Shinto priests, but Muslim, air quote, refugees. Even she's now getting pushback on that, and she's about to go. Italy is fed up. Sweden is starting to become fed up. Norway is becoming fed up. Poland has said specifically,
no.
Muslims, no.
You know who else said no?
And you can blow it out your ass, EU. We're not taking them.
You know who else said no?
I do.
Who?
Japan.
That's right.
Japan says...
Prime Minister Abe.
To the UN, Japan said, Muslim refugees, no.
You know what's funny is...
so that is a beginning trend also across the pond.
Well, and you talk to anybody who spent time in Europe, really spent time in Europe, not just vacation there. I know a kid who spent a couple years stationed there recently in the Army, and he says he's seen all these refugees, and they're walking through, and guess what? They're all military-aged men. You look at
young fighting-age men.
You look at Paris. You look at the slums that have popped up, or the ghettos that have popped up, these tent cities that are all over the place. You look at Sweden, the amount of rapes that have gone through the roof in Sweden. You look at all of these issues. I don't care who you...
Islam is not here to assimilate.
And
let's be honest.
I don't care right now. Fine, let's throw Islam. Let's just call them socialist Democrats. that are invading, right? Because it is a belief versus how you're born. You could choose to be different if you wanted to. That are invading these areas, right? It doesn't matter. As the individual state, as that sovereign state, as that individual country, you have that right to say, no, this is horrible for our nation. This is destroying our nation. I understand that these people may need stuff, but we don't have the resources to keep up with it. It is destroying the fabric of our country. Laws are being broken like crazy. Our citizens are being victimized left and right. Fuck you, no.
Which is really odd. I find this very interesting because there was a massive paradigm shift for Angela Merkel in 2010. I have a quote from Angela Merkel back in 2010. She said, essentially, in 2010, multiculti, which is their term for multiculturalism, isn't working, and she admitted it. Then she went hard left, opened the sluices and the floodgates, and all the rest of the nations surrounding Germany are quite exquisitely pissed at her. But now even she had to admit, and I'm sure you remember this constant bleat from leftists in the EU and all across Europe, not Eastern Europe, but Western Europe.
Yes.
Was, we don't have any no-go zones. You're stupid.
Bullshit.
You are so bigoted to say that
They're everywhere.
Even Angela Merkel admitted late last year there are no-go zones in Germany. And leftists want that replicated here. They want the doors open. All like to I have to say, I'll be honest, it's NIMBY.
Not in my backyard.
It's easy for you to live in a 21st floor, $1 million a year apartment in New York City, San Francisco, and say, you know what, all these people can come in. That's just fine. Until you're next door to people that refuse to assimilate and decide that they're going to take over your town, your city. They don't share your values. They don't share Western values, and they're not interested in becoming citizens.
Well, and more
they
importantly,
want what they want. They want their former country here and much more of it.
And like I said,
and they want their free shit as well.
Right. Like I said, right now it's Muslims that are doing the invasion, right? All over Europe. There's numbers being thrown out there that Europe will be Muslim nations in 20 years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The simple fact is these countries are allowing this. They're losing their identity. They lost their borders with the EU. They're losing their sovereignty to the EU, and they're allowing Brussels to dictate per every country what's best for them. England, with Brexit, has a chance. France isn't a country anymore. It's an EU state, right? Greece, all those other, Italy, you can go on and on and on. They're not their own sovereign nations anymore. They are EU states. They are no different than New Mexico being a united state. They claim to be individuals. They have their own flags. They have their own military. But the majority of the rulings that are happening in these nations are coming from the EU, who are making decisions for them, which is why Brexit occurred to begin with. Is because you had people making decisions for a nation that knew nothing the fuck about it or what the people in that nation wanted. It's socialists. It's these globalists continuing to push it. They would want, I tell you right now, you look at the constant rioting. It's not covered on the American news.
Oh, no.
Paris is rioting every night of the week right now.
My brother, who is, let's just say he's wealthy, sold a company that he helped to create for millions of dollars.
I thought you said sold a country. I was really impressed.
He's not quite that powerful. But he has gone to Paris and has said that most every night in the great motels in which he occupies, he says there are barbecues every night.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't stop.
Right. It's never
ending. And he doesn't want to talk about it, and he doesn't want to think about it. And occasionally this information will get through.
Not much.
But
when you see
all these countries are shooting themselves in the head.
When you see those those shithole countries that
like California
that Trump talked about, right? Where everything's on fire and burning. Mogadishu, Libya for years, Iraq, all of those other states, Yemen, all that. Why do you think they are that way?
What here's
and why do you think Paris is starting? Because Paris is the one that let them in first. Look, we've seen attacks in England, and a lot of that stuff's kind of trumped down. You just had one in Brussels where a Muslim guy got out of jail until killed 2 female police officers. You've had these attacks over and over and over, but Paris is a constant state of emergency. It is absolutely being terrorized from within via these riots. They're attacking anybody who walks down the street. It's out of control. Out of control.
Without a doubt, it is. We could sit here and pontificate for quite some time, and we've had a great run. We've had a great night.
We have.
I would love to have you back on tomorrow night. I don't think that's going to occur. That having been said, whenever we can get you on either my show or your show, everybody misses you. Everybody wants to see you.
Thank you.
And it's like there's something inherent within your nature and my nature is we need this.
Yeah.
We need to sit behind a microphone and just kvetch.
Yeah, we need to bitch and moan all we can
about stuff.
Hey, I want to throw a quick shout out to my family back in Boston who hosted me and the kids for the last couple of weeks. It was a blast. It was so great to see so many people, and I just want to say thank you because it had been a long time since we'd been back there, and it was a wonderful trip.
And with that, folks, only have this. Tomorrow night on BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show, I'm going to have a guy on named Ralph Benko. He's the president of the Alinsky Institute. Yes, that's the Saul Alinsky Institute. I spoke to him at Freedom Fest in 2017. We didn't make it back this year. And so he is an Alinskyite. And I've got a few things that I want to talk to him. And I need to find out what his viewpoint is on Saul Alinsky. And tomorrow night, he's going to tell me. Sean,
yes,
thanks
sir.
for being here.
Thank you.
It has been an honor and a pleasure, and it's great to see you. You're going to be back again. The sad thing is we just don't know when.
Soon.
So, folks, God bless. Take care. Come back tomorrow night for Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show. God bless. See ya.